Midnight at Ouagadougou International Airport. The stars above glittered silently, but below tension crackled in every corner of the VIP lounge. The room was locked down, guarded, sealed, and on the long mahogany table lay not one, not 17, but 18 suitcases, each one a sealed chapter of Africa's hidden history. 18 suitcases, 17 million, 17 traitors, and one conspiracy that stretched far beyond borders. President Ibrahim Traoré stood motionless. His eyes were fixed on the final suitcase, number 18, freshly delivered from airport security. Beside him, the French ambassador Jacques Dubois was visibly shaking. Around them, high-ranking officials ready for war or revolution. This suitcase held no gold, no cash, no weapons. Instead, it carried classified documents, pages and pages of meetings agreements, covert collaborations, and one name stood out, a name no one dared suspect: Kenya's President William Ruto. The room froze. What had been a national scandal was now a continental web of betrayal. Not just France, but Africans too, aiding and abetting a new colonial order. That night, the 18 suitcases did more than expose corruption. They opened a gateway to truth, and across Africa millions would never sleep again. The first suitcase was unsealed under heavy silence. Black diplomatic, supposedly untouchable, but inside bundles of crisp euro banknotes, each stack marked with the French central bank seal. Total 1 million euros, and in the side compartment gold bars, pure, stamped with Burkina Faso's insignia. "This is our gold," Traoré declared, "born of our people's sweat." Suitcase 2 was even more alarming: state secrets. Detailed maps of gold and uranium mines, and shockingly oil reserves not yet announced. Documents that only 5 people in the country had seen. Someone had sold them. All eyes turned to a name on one document: Pascal Urago, head of the National Geology Agency. Suitcase 3 photographs, one after another. Ministers partying in Paris, generals in Swiss banks, wives of governors in luxury boutiques. Dates, times, locations carefully recorded. A professional blackmail archive, whispered the justice minister. What was the goal? Ambassador Traoré asked. Dubois said nothing. His silence screamed the answer. Suitcase 4 contained advanced surveillance gear. Tiny cameras that could fit inside buttons, bird-sized drones, jammers and signal scanners. One gadget bore the NSA logo. Shared tech among NATO allies, Dubois tried. Used where? Traoré retorted. Against whom? Africa. Us. Suitcase 5 dozens of fake identities, passports, press cards, NGO IDs, all with different names, but the same face. This man came last month as a journalist, said Aminata, then as a human rights observer. Spies masquerading as the press and aid workers, using international law as camouflage. Suitcase 6 was heavy with betrayal. Inside were top-secret military documents, troop deployments, weapons inventories, structural weaknesses. These are only accessible by 3 people, stammered Kabore. 4, Traoré corrected. You forgot Mariam the janitor. 20 years of silence. She saw everything. The most effective spies, he reminded them, are the ones you never notice. Suitcase 7 revealed bundles of cash again, but now in multiple currencies: dollars, pounds, yuan. Bribery fund, said Aminata. Payable in everyone's favorite flavor. It wasn't just for officials' gift tags, named spouses, children. They're not just buying power, she said, they're buying families. Suitcase 8 glittered luxury watches, fine jewelry, electronics, accompanied by polite cards, graduation gift, thank you general, senders French mining firms, recipients governors, army generals. This is an economy of corruption, Kabore observed, accounted like Swiss banking. Suitcase 9, cold as steel. Personal data on Traoré himself, medical files, surveillance photos, audio from classified meetings. My latest checkup, he said, holding a paper. Only my doctor knew. Another sheet verbatim transcript from a supposedly secure room. If no device, then it's a person, he said calmly. All eyes turned to the absent man from that meeting the defense minister. Suitcase 10 was deceptively innocent scientific reports, geologic studies, water resource maps. Our universities took years to produce this, Aminata said. Now French companies will exploit them, presenting it as their own discovery. Suitcase 11 was deceptively light, no gold, no guns. But what it contained was more dangerous than any weapon. As it was unlatched, the people in the room first assumed it held harmless documents. That illusion evaporated quickly. Inside were hundreds of glossy leaflets, posters and brochures, all professionally printed with the slogan, "A New Future for Burkina Faso." The centerpiece of each design, a man long presumed dead, Laurent Compaoré, the failed coup leader from 2019. Aminata picked up a stack of papers and flipped through them, scripted speeches, high-production video storyboards, and staged interviews. One video showed Compaoré standing confidently in a polished studio setting behind him. Unmistakably, the Eiffel Tower blurred into the background. "They've been keeping him in France," she murmured, "grooming him for a comeback." Traore stepped forward. "Modern warfare doesn't begin with bullets," he said. "It begins with headlines, hashtags, and edited footage. If we lose control of our narrative, we lose the soul of our people." Suitcase 12 brought the room to a halt. Inside were foam-lined trays filled with tiny glass vials, unmarked tablets, syringes thinner than a sewing needle, and packets of fine white powder. Compaoré put on gloves and lifted one bottle. Its label read, "Cardiac arrest inducer, odorless, tasteless, undetectable." Another simulates food poisoning. A third, instant stroke trigger, effect within 10 minutes. Each item came with a usage guide, dosages based on wait time of effect, and countermeasures none. "This is an assassination kit," Aminata said, barely able to speak. "No need for guns or explosions. They kill silently without leaving a mark." Traoré's gaze shifted to Dubois, who was visibly trembling. "Who were these for?" Traoré asked, voice steady. Dubois stammered, I don't know. I just transported them." "Enough," Compaoré snapped. "You personally carried these cases onto the plane." Nobody responded. No one had to. The truth was now plain. This was not espionage. It was modern warfare, silent but lethal. Suitcase 13 contained no weapons, no toxins, but it could cripple an entire nation. Inside were USB drives, SSD hard disks, and labeled DVDs. A cybersecurity expert, Abdul Lay, was summoned immediately. After a quick scan, he turned pale. "Mr. President," he said, "these hold full backups of Burkina Faso's national digital infrastructure, government databases, banking networks, telecommunications, even the power grid." The room froze. "If someone activates these systems remotely," Abdul continued, "they can paralyze the country. Bank transactions will stop. Media will go dark. The national grid will go offline." Traoré looked at the data in silence. "They don't need tanks," he said. "They need code. This is cyber warfare." Then came Suitcase 14, the final dagger one aimed at economic sovereignty. Inside were contracts, oil and gas agreements, legal drafts, and signed pages. Compaoré held up one document and read, "Clause 42, 80% of all profits from discovered petroleum reserves shall go to the French energy conglomerate. Burkina Faso retains 20%. Duration 50 years. Aminata flipped to the signature page. Her face went pale. "Mr. President, this bears your signature." Traoré stepped forward. He studied the ink down to the curl of the last letter. "That's not mine," he said, "but it's perfect. A forged signature crafted to look like mine. They didn't just steal our oil," he added, voice hollow. "They stole my identity." The room went still, not out of shock, out of realization. Conclusion: English 4 suitcases, no explosions, no bloodshed, but capable of annihilating a nation from the inside. propaganda to rewrite history, poison to erase threats, cyber weapons to shut down an entire country, and forged contracts to rob a people of their wealth for half a century. These weren't suitcases. They were weapons of silent war. In this war, there are no battlefields, only boardrooms, screens, and signatures. But the cost is the same freedom. Suitcase 15 looked harmless, but held the most chilling content yet. Inside was a list. Thousands of names, teachers, journalists, students, clergy, artists, union leaders. Next to each name was a code K, silenced T, arrested S, exiled X, eliminated. Aminata's voice trembled. 47 marked with an X. That includes you, Cabaret, and me. Traore looked at the first line. It was his own name, bold and underlined. Suitcase 16 revealed military satellite imagery. Hyper-detailed maps marked every base fuel depot armory. License plates could be read. An invasion blueprint, Cabaret whispered. They're ready, just waiting for the order. Suitcase 17. The heaviest contained a black leather dossier, titled in gold Operation Sankara. Inside were photographs, forensics, and documents detailing the 1987 assassination of Thomas Sankara. Names were named French intelligence CIA liaisons and 12 Burkina officers. At the end, Phase 2, 2023-2024, target Ibrahim Traoré, final method physical elimination. Traoré's hand trembled. 36 years, he said quietly. Same mission, same enemy. Then came Suitcase 18, the final blow. It held a top-secret file stamped East Africa. Inside transcripts and photographs from clandestine meetings between French diplomats and a figure identified as President of Kenya. The image was clear, William Ruto. The documents detailed resource deals, media alignment, political pacts, meetings held discreetly in Nairobi, Paris, Brussels. In exchange for silence in East Africa, lucrative contracts and political support were promised. The room fell silent. It's not just France, Traoré said. Even our own are complicit. This wasn't bilateral, it was continental. A network of power players sacrificing their nations for personal gain. As the first rays of sunlight touched the skies over Ouagadougou, the city was no longer the same place it had been the night before. The entire nation, no, the entire continent was on edge. On national television, President Ibrahim Traoré appeared calm, but his eyes blazed with fire. Behind him, 18 suitcases stood in perfect alignment, silent witnesses to a conspiracy unlike any other in Burkina Faso's history. My fellow citizens, he began. Last night we opened not just suitcases, we opened our eyes. We are no longer asleep, we are awake. For the next 2 hours, one by one, each suitcase was opened live. Nothing was hidden, no edits, no censorship. Gold documents, fake IDs, surveillance tools, poisons, all exposed to the public piece by piece. The truth was raw, painful, but it was finally visible. And then it happened. The internet erupted. The hashtag #DSUR18 suitcases trended worldwide. Within 24 hours, it surpassed 100 million shares. Across Africa, Mali, Niger, Senegal, Congo, South Africa citizens uploaded videos. We want to open our own suitcases. In Mali, the government launched a full audit of all foreign mining contracts. Niger ordered a review of every diplomatic flight in the past 3 years. In Kenya, a fierce debate exploded over President William Ruto's alleged involvement. In Paris, crisis meetings went non-stop, but this time France had lost control of the narrative. At the United Nations, Burkina Faso's ambassador stood before the General Assembly. In his hands, a folder. Behind him, a giant screen displayed the 18 suitcases. This, he said, is why we will no longer stay silent. China's delegate declared, "We support Burkina Faso's sovereignty and their right to control their own resources." Russia's representative said bluntly, "Colonialism is over. Those who deny that will be left behind." The U.S. chose ambiguity, neither defending France nor condemning Burkina Faso. But silence itself spoke volumes. The world had changed. From Cairo to Lagos, from Kigali to Luanda, civil society, students, journalists, and researchers reopened old archives. The narrative had changed. The people wanted to know the truth. In Dakar, students recreated each suitcase in a 3D academic project. In Pretoria, a museum launched an exhibit titled Resources and Betrayal, the African Faces of the 18 Suitcases. In Abidjan, citizens marched through the streets chanting, "We are Sankara's children." Meanwhile, in Ouagadougou, the 18 suitcases were transferred to a newly created National Independence Museum. Crowds lined up daily to witness them. An old teacher spoke to her class. "Once we were taught history written by others. From now on, you will write your own." At midnight, Traore stepped onto his balcony and gazed out over Ouagadougou. Celebration fires still burned. Drums echoed. Voices sang in unison. From his pocket he pulled a worn photograph, Thomas Sankara smiling. A man betrayed, a dream unfinished. "We did it, Commander," he whispered. "Late, but we did it." When I finished reading the story of the 18 suitcases, I didn't just see it as a compelling narrative. I felt it as a jolt to the conscience. It wasn't merely a tale of corruption and espionage. It was a mirror, a declaration, a spark in the dry forest of modern African history. In the heart of Burkina Faso, a landlocked country often overlooked on the global stage, a truth of seismic magnitude was unveiled. And it wasn't done through weapons or revolutions, but through the simple, revolutionary act of opening suitcases. Opening them not in secrecy, but in front of cameras, citizens, and the watching world. What struck me most was not the amount of money, nor the gold bars, nor even the spy gear. It was the decision to expose, to trust the people with the truth. President Ibrahim Traoré chose transparency over vengeance, exposure over censorship, and sovereignty over compromise, and that in a continent too accustomed to strongmen who hide behind diplomacy and silence is nothing short of radical. Throughout history, we've seen governments bury scandals, silence dissent, and sanitize reality. But Traoré did the unthinkable. He showed everything. He didn't curate the narrative, he gave it raw. This wasn't just courage, it was faith in the people. I believe the most dangerous threat to any oppressive system is not an army, it's an informed citizen. When people see the truth, they don't need leaders to tell them what to do. They know what must be done. And what started in Burkina Faso didn't stay there. The Narer 18 suitcases hashtag became a banner of collective awakening. In Mali, Niger, Senegal, Congo, everywhere, people began asking, "What's in our suitcases?" Not metaphorically, but literally. What secrets have been smuggled out of our airports, buried in our cabinets, locked in diplomatic pouches? The most painful part to me was not the French involvement. That was expected. It was the revelation of complicity from within. The mention of Kenya's William Ruto as part of a secret deal to ensure regional silence in exchange for influence and contracts was devastating. Because betrayal from outsiders is one thing, betrayal by those we call our own, those who claim to represent us, is a deeper wound. It raises a terrifying question. What is more dangerous to Africa, foreign exploitation or internal treachery? We often find comfort in blaming the West. And yes, they must be held accountable for centuries of extraction and manipulation. But the 18 suitcases revealed a second layer, the African elite class, presidents, ministers, ambassadors, who in exchange for Swiss accounts and Paris vacations, sell out entire generations. This is why Traoré's actions matter, because he didn't just expose the colonizer, he exposed the collaborator. To me, the miracle wasn't that Burkina Faso defied France. The real miracle was that for the first time in years, millions of Africans felt represented, felt heard, felt that someone in power wasn't speaking for them, but with them. And that's how a spark becomes a wildfire. University students in Dakar began building 3D models of the suitcases. Museums in South Africa began exhibitions on African resource theft. Street protesters in Abidjan held signs that read, "We are the children of Sankara." Suddenly the vocabulary changed. No more foreign aid. People now said resource theft. No more diplomatic ties. They now said economic handcuffs. 18 suitcases did what no political summit ever could. It ignited consciousness. It told the world Africa is no longer asking. It's remembering, reclaiming, resisting. And yes, Traore might be targeted. Yes, he may be isolated, overthrown, even assassinated. But that would not erase what's been awakened. Because he didn't just open suitcases, he opened minds. That's irreversible. He showed us that our gold doesn't have to buy jets in France. It can build schools. Our oil doesn't have to fund palaces. It can fuel hospitals. Our data doesn't have to be stolen. It can power innovation. The 18 suitcases are not an end. They are a beginning. They are not a victory. They are a warning to those who still play the old colonial game, and to those within our borders who help them. And perhaps most importantly, they are a promise that the continent is waking up, and we will not sleep again. Some stories you read and forget, others you read and think about. But then there are stories that stay with you like a scar, not because they hurt, but because they're real. For me, the story of the 18 suitcases is one of those. It didn't feel like a typical political fable. It wasn't just fiction, it was a vivid, raw portrait of how a nation can be looted silently for decades, and how it can rise again, not through war, but through the radical act of revealing the truth. 1. When a leader chooses to reveal, not conceal. What I admired most about President Ibrahim Traoré wasn't just that he opened the suitcases, it was that he opened them in front of the world. In an age where most leaders hide, sanitize, or manipulate information to maintain power, Traoré did something revolutionary. He gave the people everything, unfiltered, uncut. He didn't weaponize the truth. He didn't privatize it. He believed it belonged to the people, and in doing so, he shattered the old narrative that leadership is about control. Instead, he showed that real leadership is about trust. I asked myself, if I were in his place, would I have had the courage to do that? To risk it all, not just power, but reputation, safety, stability for the sake of truth. That's when I understood democracy isn't just about ballots. It's about believing the people can handle reality. 2. Truth does not destroy nations. Silence does. One of the biggest myths in African governance is that exposing corruption causes instability. 18. Suitcases prove the opposite. It's the cover-ups that corrode trust. It's the silent contracts, the secret deals, the diplomatic planes full of stolen wealth that rob nations of their dignity, not the headlines. In the days that followed, we saw countries like Mali, Niger, and Senegal start reviewing contracts, launching investigations, and opening their own metaphorical suitcases. Because when a truth this bold is brought to light, it doesn't shatter a country. It strengthens its spine. I learned something powerful. A nation that faces the truth doesn't fall, it stands taller. 3. The most dangerous betrayal comes from within. One of the most heartbreaking moments in the story was the revelation in Suitcase 18. Documents exposed secret meetings between French diplomats and Kenyan President William Ruto, allegedly to ensure East African compliance in exchange for contracts and influence. I wasn't shocked by foreign collusion. That was expected. But the involvement of a sitting African leader that hit hard, because betrayal from outsiders is painful, but betrayal by your own is soul-crushing. Too often we point fingers at Western powers, and yes, they must answer for their exploitation. But 18 suitcases showed us another villain. The elite class within Africa, leaders who trade away futures for personal gain, who smile for photos while signing away oil land and silence. This wasn't just a story of colonial greed. It was a story of internal complicity, of how power doesn't just corrupt, it recruits. It taught me this Africa cannot be free until it stops selling itself. 4. When the people are no longer blind, freedom begins. What moved me most wasn't just the courage of one man, but the reaction of millions. From Ouagadougou to Nairobi, young people began asking questions. What's in our contracts? Who controls our airports? Where is our gold? Why are our leaders so quiet? In Niger, people marched with signs that read, "Where are our 18 suitcases?" In Senegal, university students built 3D replicas of the suitcases. In South Africa, museums curated exhibits titled Resources and Betrayal. The narrative had changed. This wasn't about politics anymore. It was about identity, about justice, about reclaiming what was always ours. I realized then a nation unafraid of the truth is a nation that cannot be conquered. And if there's one thing I want to learn from Burkina Faso, it's this: face the pain, because pain is how you heal. 5. A personal lesson. Courage is doing what's right, even if you lose everything. As a young person observing all of this, I used to believe politics was just a game, a stage for power compromise and managed narratives. But Traore taught me something else. Real courage isn't loud, it isn't dramatic. It's choosing truth when it's easier to lie. It's risking isolation, assassination, and betrayal to protect the dignity of your people. You don't need to be president to apply that. Every day we choose: do we stay quiet when injustice speaks? Do we click away from uncomfortable truths? Or do we stand? 18 suitcases is more than a political event. It's a moral test. And we all have to choose our answers. Conclusion: when a nation opens its eyes, history can never close them again. This story wasn't just about stolen resources, espionage, or diplomacy gone wrong. It was about what happens when conscience becomes stronger than fear. Burkina Faso didn't just reclaim gold. They reclaimed dignity. They showed the world and their own people that truth is more powerful than money, than weapons, than blackmail. I believe this event will be remembered in textbooks, speeches, and documentaries, not just as a scandal, but as a watershed moment. When one country dared to say, "We will no longer be ruled by shadows," I believe young Africans everywhere will remember this moment. And when they see those suitcases in a museum or on a screen, they'll think that's when we woke up. Because those suitcases weren't just evidence, they were mirrors. And when Africa looked into them, it saw itself clearly for the first time in decades.